Welcome back to our weekly yoga, philosophy, and Bhagavad Gita study. So wonderful to be here with you all and diving into these philosophies and ancient wisdoms and seeing how we can work it out to apply it in our everyday lives here in this modern world. So grateful to be here with all of you today. Thank you for joining, and you're welcome to engage in the conversation at any time. My wonderful sidekick and co-host and true leader of the pack, even though he likes to always say I'm the leader, is Jagai, is not here today. So just holding space for his health and his well-being as he's working through a cold, and we'll just send him some wonderful good energy. But we'll dive in today and kind of pick up from last week, talking about attachments and moving into this ending of the second chapter here with Krishna and Arjuna on the battlefield. Sound good? Okay, awesome. So we'll start with our opening prayers. If you have your Bhagavad Gita, you can open it to page 1.
Hey, Dharma, can
Yes.
you all hear me? Okay, do we want to, I know like he had dropped in the chat about memorizing, I think, verse 248. Yeah.
We can surprise him and have it all memorized by next week.
So maybe, as part of the class, we can just do the old school style where we go through and just repeat it and memorize. Yeah.
Do you, my personal hesitation with that is I'm not an expert on pronunciation and really the meter that it's chanted in sometimes, but we can at least just do it without the chanting part and just memorize the words, and we can do that together too. So, okay, thanks for that. I think that would be fun. 248. So maybe before we do that, let's chant our opening prayers. We'll just do a few of them. Some people in the room here. Okay. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagradatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitanscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavanishwari Rishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Haribo. All right. Welcome back, Camila. Thanks for joining us again.
Thank you. Apologies for my tardiness. I had an online asana practice that ran over time.
That's okay. I have had a teacher who used to say, you can always be late, but you can never leave early. So that has been my motto for a long time. All right, thanks for joining. Happy to have you all back. Jackie, nice to have you here. Asriel, Max, Ed, always good to be with you. So we're gonna pick up on chapter 2. I just want to touch on this one verse here. And then we talked about maybe memorizing this verse that we were focused on last week, which was chapter 2, text 48. Perform your duty equipoised, O Arjuna, abandoning all attachment to success or failure. And such equanimity is called yoga. So this is great if you are a yoga teacher or a yoga enthusiast, and people are like, what is yoga? What it's all about? What is the goal of yoga? Or people want to know, how is yoga asana connected to this book, the Bhagavad Gita? And so this is a nice verse to kind of tie it all together, where Krishna is giving a different definition of yoga. And we could maybe say it's a higher definition, and not higher like it's hard, we have all these words that are constructs and we want to stay away from good or bad or better or worse. But if we look at our life as a ladder that we are trying to ascend on in our development and our evolution, our forward evolution, it is what allows us to make that progress, right? When we have this sort of deeper meaning to what yoga is really trying to give us. Maybe deeper meaning is better than a higher goal. There's really a deeper meaning to the practice, more than just flexible hamstrings and a bendy spine and just having some peace of mind throughout the day. Those are all good things, regulating our nervous system. Those are all necessary things for a healthy life, a life that you feel is well lived. But a deeper meaning to yoga is that it really is trying to give us equanimity. Do you guys remember the Sanskrit word that he uses for equanimity? A sameness.
Samatvam, something like that.
Samatvam. Mm-hmm. And that really is what Hatha Yoga is trying to give us, is this evenness, this equanimity, right? Hatha Yoga is this more physically based practice that is trying to balance these solar and lunar energies. In Kundalini practices, they talk a lot about how we live on a polarity planet. That this earth realm that we're on, the nature of it is that there are these polarities, and we call that duality. And samatvam is this idea of being equipoised, being even in the midst of that polarity, right? And finding the evenness of the polarity rather than being topsy-turvy and being pulled to this polarity, and then you're pulled back to this polarity. I'm really happy because this good thing happened. I'm super depressed because this thing happened, and you're bouncing around. It's like, how do we find this equanimity where we can, I imagine like one of those exercise ball thingies that you stand on that have like little wood built around it, and you're trying to balance on this thing, right? And like, where is equanimity? It depends moment to moment, like finding, it's not like equanimity is just, it's in motion. And I think that's a misapprehension of this idea of equanimity, is that it's like perfectly still and center, but our center is always in relation to the polarity that we're in. And how do we find that equanimity as we're moving through these dynamics of polarity, like success and failure? Thoughts and questions or contributions so far? How does all that land? What are you thinking? What resistance is coming up?
Makes me think of the yin yang,
Yeah.
the way you describe balance.
And what's interesting about the yin yang symbol is, I just learned this a couple of years ago. We see it as like a flat sort of 3D image, or two-dimensional image rather, but really it's 3D, or it's like a sphere. That yin yang is actually a sphere, and it's constantly in flow and in flux and moving, right? And so when we look at the yin yang, we see this fixed thing, like it just looks fixed. But really there is this movement, and I think that's important for us to remember on our journey is, yes, we need to be fixed. There is an element of the yin yang that is fixed, like the nature of it is what it is, but it is fluid and flowing in its fixed state. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. It reminds me of the concept where sometimes it feels like in life we're walking in a spiral that's sort of repeating. We walk in and we walk back out again, but you can take that from the 2D form and look at it in 3D as well and see that, oh, we are constantly moving upwards a little bit, but it's, or downwards, you know, it's more than just that single plane.
Yeah. Yes, that's a great visual as well that I love, is because we do feel like, you know, like if you've ever walked a labyrinth, like a meditative labyrinth that you can walk, and the nature of those are, you know, like you start in and you're moving towards the center, you're following the path, but then all of a sudden you're following the path and you're on the edge again. And you're like, how am I'm trying to get in the center. Why am I going away? And then the path takes you in and you feel like, oh, it's right there. But then it takes you back out. And eventually you stay on that path and it takes you to center. But it looks like this zigzaggy path that gives the illusion of like, oh, it's right there. And then, oh no, I'm really far away. And so the spiral, right? We feel like things are circular, like we repeat the patterns, like, oh, I'm here again. Here's this pattern, I'm doing that thing again. I attracted that person in my life again. And it is circular, but it is a spiral, as Camila is saying, is we're coming at it again, but the idea is that we are moving upward on that spiral. So now as we come to it again, we see it from a different perspective. And every time we're able to find more and more of that equanimity as we move through those things, right? Yeah. Great contributions. Anyone else?
It kind of makes me think too about like we're always, because of, you know, the nature of the gunas, the human body nervous system is always going to be in that vacillation, and so what we come back to, or when we remember the, I guess the soul, the energy of the soul, and our connection with source, as whichever name that we claim it to be, and connect with, that is, you know, that is the line of equanimity that kind of just strings through everything, right?
Yeah.
I think there's a verse that refers to that, or some commentary that refers to that, where Krishna is like, you know, he's the thread that weaves through everything.
Mm-hmm.
It just kind of made me think about that. Like, I'll accept that, you know, energetically, my body will always go up and down, you know, but my samatvam is at whatever point I can just fall back into that acceptance of, you know, the body is going through this, is happening, but like there, you know, I don't know, just that if I could just tap back into that memory or that remembrance energy that is consistent and has been consistent, ever flowing, right? Eternal, infinite soul energy. And it kind of like just allows the body, or it allows a settling within the shakiness or the nervousness or the sadness or the joy and happiness, right? All that is still happening, but there's like just a settling within that.
Really beautifully said. And totally ties into the next verse I was going to bring us to. But yeah, such a great realization to share with the group. You know, we're in a human body that is governed by the gunas, the modes of nature, right? The mode of ignorance, the mode of passion, and the mode of goodness. We are vacillating through those things. We whether we like it or not, it's just something that is imposed upon us. The modes of nature. We live in nature that has all these modes. And so how do we find that common thread or that common ground within us that can bring us back to that centered place as we are vacillating through those things? And so maybe, I don't know if you were speaking of a different verse, but if we can turn to chapter 2, verse 41, text 41.
Now, I was trying to think of something that that's like that, some tangible thing that's like that, where, you know, the outside around it is shaking up, and but on the inside it is, oh, like that. I was thinking of Men in Black a little bit. You know, that machine that they were riding at the end. I don't know if anybody's seen the movie, but it was like doing all this craziness, but they were just sitting in the center of it. It was like,
Yeah.
you know, but there was
Yeah.
actually movement happening as they were turning this way, turning that way.
Well, even think about if you've ever ridden a motorcycle or a bicycle or a skateboard, you know, as whatever you're riding in the terrain that you're on, you have to turn. And so your force of center of gravity, you have to shift where that center of gravity is a little bit, or shift into that new space of center of gravity to maintain balance, right? Like you can't just stay centered on a motorcycle as you take a turn. You have to go with it, but maintain centered to some degree. And so we're trying to find that. I like that image of the vehicle in the Men in Black, where it's just all spinning around, but they're always in that equanimity as the thing is just moving around them. So
I even thought about, like, if as you know, when you look at a car, if you look at it at the wheel, if it has a good suspension system and shocks or whatever, you know, the wheels might be bouncing around and doing all that, but the people on the inside of the car, if it's a smooth ride, they're having a smooth ride regardless of the terrain that they're rolling on.
we need a suspension system. What is our good suspension system? What is our shock absorber that we're using to like take all this terrain that we're in life? And so let's look at text 41. I think this is helpful. And so this is, you know, this is, for me, this really helps. Those who are on this path are resolute in purpose, right? So those who are on this path are resolute in purpose, and their aim is one. O beloved child of the Kurus, that's what he's calling Arjuna, the intelligence of those who are irresolute is many branched. So in my perspective, what he's communicating here is when we have that anchor, when we have that shock system or that suspension system, that is our aim. Like this is what keeps me balanced. And we're focused on that. Even though all the other things are going on, doesn't mean we take away from those other things, but this is our anchor, right? This is what we ground down into. This is what we root into. When we have that one aim, it allows us to move through the terrain of life. But when we're many branched, when we're like, well, I kind of believe this over here, and I'm kind of doing that over there, and I'm checking out this group over here, and I'm trying to, you know, get my life going over there, and we're not focused, right? When we're not focused on what our suspension system is, so to speak, right? Then we have this inability to be resolute. We're irresolute, right? When it's many branch. So it's like, I want to connect to God because I want his blessing, and I need to make more money. And so I'm going to pray and I'm going to become more faithful. You know, now it's like, we want to connect to God, but then we have this other branch over here. It's like, because I'm struggling financially, or, you know, different things that we tack on to how we connect to God and what we expect to get back from divinity, from source, as opposed to the Bhakta's path, right? The path that the Bhaktas walk is like, our only aim is just to be in connection with source. That's it. Just to be connected to source. That's our one aim, is just to have that connection. And so then, because we have that resolution, then so many other things are taken care of or unfold as they should, as they're meant for us. But when we're scattered with what we're connecting to, I mean, you can apply this just in your material everyday life. If you have too many things going on and you're scattered, it's hard to really dive deep into that one thing, and diving deep into that one thing is what helps us ground into it and find a centeredness in that thing. But when we're spread really thin, it's really hard to find deeper meaning, deeper connection, deeper results, because we're spreading our energy thin all over the place. So you guys are nodding your head, that's landing. What are your thoughts so far?
It's like when you work in a busy place and somebody says, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. Just like a common expression for like, you know, we're not communicating well, and we're not focused and tasked, we're spread out, we're spread too thin. And that definitely comes to play in personal lives as well. I know that for myself.
Yeah. Great. Anyone else?
You know, like it's like Max said too, it's, you know, and then the word that it uses being resolute on a path, you know, like just it's as if, you know, you're driving down a road. It could be a highway, it could be in a forest somewhere, but you know, there's a light at the end, and you're supposed to get there, but you keep driving off to the left, you keep driving off to the right, you know, and you go and then you drive off to the left, and you're like, why am I not getting there? But I keep driving over to the left, or I keep driving to the right. Then I got to come back, or you know, I start making other turns, when if I could just stay focused on the path. And it's not to say to be closed-minded or to be, you know, blind to grow in awareness and understanding, but it's like to not waver from, and not, you know, go too far out from the path as it's laid out, right? As this particular path, or any path that one would choose, is laid out by, you know, by the teachers and the teachings, right?
Yeah.
It is kind of laid out, but we do figure out life along the way. But it does seem like we discover that, you know, the ancestors, the ancients, they kind of, they did figure it out, but not with all the variety and variations of, you know, 2021, right? But even in 2021, the same thread still leads down the same path in the same way to self-realization and connection.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like your point there. It doesn't mean that we're closed-minded and we think there's only one way. There's many branches. Krishna is saying there's many branches, and he even says later on, like, all paths eventually lead back to me, right? And what to me that means is all paths lead back to connection with divinity. One way or another, we're going to get there. But when we are irresolute, that journey is totally different. It's such a very different experience, and we suffer and we struggle more than we need to. Life has challenges, it has suffering, it has struggle, it's unavoidable, but we compound that by being irresolute and or just not focused. Or I think sometimes too, we're still figuring it out. Like, we don't really know what we believe in yet. And so I want to hold space for that too. Is, you know, you may not know what your definition or understanding of God, source, creation is, and you to put a name to it feels like, I'm not really sure I want to do that yet. And give yourself the room to have that process, because that is part of the process. But finding your resolution underneath that is, you're resolute in the idea that I want that connection with divinity. I don't know what it is yet. I don't know what it looks like yet. I don't know if I fully understand it yet, but I am resolute in that's the direction I'm headed. So we can find resolution, right? This commitment to something to anchor into, even if we're still uncertain of the overarching, like, defining what that thing is. Does that make sense? Azriel?
Yeah, I like where you're taking this verse, because I didn't initially think of it in that sense. Or I guess there are many ways of thinking this, but I feel like I come back to this on a daily of like getting caught up in my own life and attachments and things and, almost forgetting, and then having to come back and be like, okay, I trust that these things that are happening are for me. I try to release my attachments, and like I find myself, maybe the many branched irresolute is even more of just daily happenings of life that kind of lose you and lose your focus and get you caught up in, the materialistic manifestation of the life that we're living. And then coming back to, okay, yes, I have my, I coming back to that path of resolution and trust and that knowing that you're taken care of. So that's how I initially thought of it. And I really resonate with what you're describing of like that, wanting to define your beliefs or path in one specific, context or way, as being part of the journey. I really appreciate that you said that, because I've often, this philosophy is fairly new to me. So, yeah, I'm really, really happy that you said that. It gave me a little bit of like, oh yeah, comfort of it's all part of the process. And that's okay. Because for a long time, I did not ever want to say the word God. Like I did not want to say that at all. Like it just didn't feel right. And this year I can openly say that word and feel like, whether or not other people know exactly what my own definition is of it, that's okay. And, I especially through this season, I've even seen so many like parallels in other beliefs and religions during certain times of the year, like Easter and Christmas, and how similar their celebrations are. And that's something that I've also tried to look for like more of, rather than my older mindset of like, this self-righteous, like, I don't believe that, I'm not that, I think that that's also really helped me embrace this path so much more of as something that, is for me, that resolution and purpose. Just like you're saying, we're all trying to get to the same place.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Beautifully said, and signs of a spiritually mature person. When we can start to see the essence of someone else's practice and find the similarities rather than hone in on the differences that create division, because there are a lot more similarities than there are differences. So it's a good sign of spiritual maturity when you start to notice that you're looking at things that way. So it's really great. Being resolute, as you were talking, I was thinking about this analogy that I heard from Kastuba. If you don't know Kastuba Das in New York, you can check out Wisdom of the Sages on YouTube. Really great podcast and YouTube show with Kastuba and Raghunath. But Kastuba uses this analogy of the tree a lot. And so, in order to water the tree, what part of the tree do you need to water for it to grow? The leaves, the branches, the bark, the roots. What part needs the water? The roots, right? But if we're like, let me put some water on this leaf, maybe some water on that leaf, and I'll just water all these different leaves, we're never really watering the root. But when we water at the root, then all the leaves get the nourishment. All those other things that are out on the extremities, they get what they need, and they grow as they need to grow naturally, right? And so for me, this verse, being resolute, is like figuring out what are your roots that need to be watered, and making sure that you're doing that to some degree in your life, daily or weekly, so that your leaves, because it's not that I think we sometimes think we got to be so narrow, so focused, so dedicated that we don't get to do anything else. We don't get to focus on anything else. But life is full of so much stuff. We are going to be engaged in a lot of things. But when we get distracted with all the lot of things, like Azrael is saying, it like your agenda gets like usurped by other people's agendas and the world's agenda, right? And what other people expect of you and want from you or are telling you to do. And so we're going to have to be in the world and do our duty and do those things, but we need to make time to be resolute in watering our roots. Really, really important that we water our roots. So figuring out what that is for you. For the bhakta, that's chanting japa. That's listening to kirtan. That's hearing, katha, stories of Krishna and these pastimes that are inspiring. These are ways in the bhakti tradition that we water our roots. And when we water the roots, we can trust that everything in our lives is going to be fed, right? Everything is going to be fed from that watering. So for me, this verse is like, when you're on this path of you want to be in connection with your creator, even if you don't know what that creator is or who that creator is, you just know you want that connection. You want to rest in the ease of union with that divinity, with that source. We have to be resolute, right? In watering the roots that allow that to happen. So what do you guys think? What are your thoughts? Not all at once. Kailash, glad to see you on the class today.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Anyone, Max?
Yeah, I got one because as Azrael was talking about working through the same thing over and over again, I was thinking about how my yoga teacher here in Ohio, she's always talking about it's all our karma. It's my karma or another person's karma, and it's just an opportunity to work through that thing. And so even challenges, difficult things, it's an opportunity. So it's like, okay, that's my karma. I'm going to work through this yet again. But that made me think about the wheel of samsara and being stuck in karma because of what we're in. And that took me right back to Ed's thing of when we can be resolute, when we can be calm in the center of all the karma that we're going through. Okay, it's just my karma, and I'm resolute in that it's all taking me somewhere. So I just want to share that connection with y'all.
I did.
And so like the thread is like Max just said, and which Krishna has been talking to Arjuna about, which is whatever we're doing, whatever we're going through, we are doing it unattached to the results, but doing it in service, right, to Krishna in this sense, or to God as one understands it. And so to like also tap into the purport a little bit to kind of we also like show what Dharma was talking about and in referencing Kastuba. In the purport, I think it might be on the second page after it. I'm not sure the page because I'm on my phone, but there's a paragraph that starts, the resolute purpose of a person in Krishna consciousness is based on knowledge. Vasudeva Sarvam, right? That statement means a person in Krishna consciousness is the rare good soul who knows perfectly that Vasudeva, is Krishna, is the root of all manifested cause, right? All manifested cause. That's the good fluctuation and vacillation, or the not so good, the challenges, the suffering. And it says, as by watering the root of a tree, as Dharma was talking about, one automatically distributes water to the leaves and the branches. And so by acting in Krishna consciousness or your flavor of God consciousness, one can render the highest service to everyone, and then namely self, family, society, country, humanity, etc. And Krishna is satisfied by one's action, then everyone is satisfied. Although people might not be satisfied in their judgments and in their
It's so
But,
true.
I thought that was a great parallel to watering the roots, and then all the leaves and branches of the trees are different areas in life that we live and interact in. And so coming back to the roots, like Dharma said, is um, you know our japa or our meditation or asana practice, you know, whatever we've chosen to do.
Beautifully said. Camila, you seem like you want to say something.
I just have, you're so in tune. I just have a query around the idea of the root, because I think that sometimes finding what or where the root is can be a big part of the journey. And we talk about it often in the medical world, where people are just tending the symptom, the problem, they're not getting to the root of the problem. And it's that same concept here. And it's like, well, where is the root that I need to be watering right now? Ed mentioned a few choices, but which of those is going to be mine? And yeah, just that journey of finding what your personal root is, and acknowledging that everyone else is going to have a different root, or like literally ROUTE, root to the root, or you say it route, being American.
Yeah, that's a great point. And we can sit here and philosophize and talk in these sort of like absolute ideas, intellectualize them, and they sound good as we're talking about them. But as we journey through life, it's never as clear as when we're reading it in a book and thinking about it. It's nuanced, it's layered, and there is a process where discovering where the roots are. Like, I don't know if you've done any gardening, but sometimes you want to pull a weed out and you're like, where does this plant, like, where is this? And you have to kind of research or investigate rather, and look around and poke around and move some stuff out of the way and dig a little bit here. And, oh no, that root belongs to this plant over here. Let me dig over here. And like, I think these are the roots. Let me look and see if they connect here. And so we are going to go through a process of that. But even in that process of discovery, I think we can find a place to rest in resolution, that we can be watering that place until we figure out that these are the real roots here, right? Just like in illness and dis-ease, we may be like, well, I have this symptom. And if you're working with a really nice holistic practitioner of some sort, in Ayurveda, we'll do this. It's like, we will address that symptom and that imbalance until it starts to subside. And then what we find is, oh, lo and behold, there's something that's underneath that too, that now we're going to address that thing. And like an onion, we just peel the layers off until we can finally be like, okay, this is the core of it. We found the root. And so I think often in these really beautiful ancient wisdom traditions, especially in the yogic path, it can seem oversimplified. Like, it's just be resolute. And it's like, well, I want to, but where? I want to make sure I'm making the right choice where I'm going to be resolute. So allow yourself that time and space for discovery and for investigation, but maintaining this understanding that I don't want to be distracted with what we sometimes call shiny object syndrome, where it's like, I'm learning about this deity. Oh, I learned about that deity. Oh, maybe I'll chant this mantra. Oh, maybe I'll go to this style yoga. There's a part early on as we're learning, just like children, like one day they want to wear very colorful clothes and then the next day they want to wear all black. It's like they're going to vacillate until they find who they are. And we're going to do that in our spiritual journey, where, we are going to have this wavering as we're investigating, as we are exploring. But as long as we can hold this knowledge of, at some point, to remember that you're on an investigative journey and you're not just on a fun, whimsical adventure. Like, I'm just going to try everything, and I'm going to go over here and do this, amazing energetic stuff. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do this very traditional spiritual. It's okay to explore, but we have to keep in mind that our exploration is so that we can find the root, and because we can lose sight and we get caught in the whimsical adventure of it all. And that's where we end up in the extremes of success or failure. We end up in the extremes of like watering the leaves, because the leaves are the shiny parts that like dance in the wind. And we're like, oh, those are so pretty. Look at those leaves. And we rarely do we walk by a tree and go, wow, look at the beautiful roots on that tree. We immediately are noticing the leaves or the lack thereof. There's some of us, I definitely love looking at the roots of trees, but that may be just because I love to get to the root of things. And so holding the space for the investigative exploration, but not getting lost in that, because that's where a lot of people get lost. That's why there's such a heavy emphasis in the yoga tradition of like, find a teacher, pick a path, get initiated. Because there's so much out there that you'll just start to float around, and before you know it, you've had 3 different initiations with 3 different gurus, and you may feel like you have some spiritual knowledge, but you don't have the anchoring and something to feel stable and having that longevity that you want, right? There's a lot of vacillation and ping-ponging that happens when we do that. I love to study many different traditions. I like to explore different teachers, but at some point you got to have your foundation. Like you got to have your roots, and everything else you can kind of build on top of that, but you got to, it really is helpful to be less and less in the success or the failures and that vacillation, to have that nice foundation. Ed, you look like you want to say something. No? Okay. Anyone got comments, questions, contributions?
I just wanted to say that I really appreciate your words on that topic, because it's something that I've become more and more aware of, even in the last couple of weeks, in particular from being introduced to you, and how grounded and steeped in tradition you are for someone who visibly looks quite young, and reflecting on my own journey. And I feel like I'm very much in that vacillating space, and I've had a teacher that I connected with strongly at the start, or part of the start of my practices and journeys, and then I've since realized that was quite a limiting relationship, and I have explored other avenues, and each has given me a little bit of something, but I've never felt like I've discovered a guru or a lineage that I really feel anchored into, and thus a lot of feelings of floating about, being a little adrift, and the suffering that, or the sense of unease that comes with that. So it's good to recognize that there's a solution out there, and it's just opening myself up to finding, or asking the universe, God, where and who is going to be my next founding teacher or guru.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I can relate to that situation. And once you've had a teacher that, you've accepted as like, this person is my rock right now, they're my foundation right now, and it goes awry, it goes sour, and it turns unhealthy, it can be really detrimental to our spiritual journey. It can be very defeating, and it can just throw us for a loop. Absolutely. I know I went through something very much difficult like that, and I've just felt like I was floating in space, untethered to anything. And I didn't like that feeling. And so holding space for that, like just knowing where you are, like, okay, you all those experiences are preparing you for when you arrive at your roots. You'll be really ready, Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it made me think about, couple of things. The you know, root as far as like origin or foundation, I guess can kind of be dualistic in the sense that we either come from nothing or we come from something. And some people might believe that we come from something, but they're just not willing to name it or worry about it. So that might make it a third path of what we choose the root or the foundation to be. And then I was thinking about like we're using this idea of watering, right? And so I'm all up in that metaphor with like, you know, when we water our plant or when the rain comes down, you know, and it hits the soil, like we can't really see which direction, how the water travels or flows through the soil, right? Takes whatever direction it takes to get there, it just gets there, and we believe that it gets there. And the evidence is, you know, in the leaves and the wherever the roots are around, if it's breaking up the concrete and disrupting some stuff. But the trees and stuff like that, that's the sort of the evidence that we have. And so when I was thinking about that was, you know, that's what it, you know, our kind of like we're really building and defining and cultivating this thing, this belief system, this faith in what we're doing. And, you know, we try out meditation, we try out yoga asana, we try out, you know, the japa, the kirtan chanting, the going to church, the, you know, all the different ways in which we are watering, right? All these different activities are the watering, and we just got to water, right? We just water, and we don't necessarily have, I don't know, right? Like when I'm doing my japa or chanting kirtan or doing the yoga practice or meditating or sleeping, the connection of the water to what I believe is source is like, you know, sometimes it's like, I can't really tell the difference. I don't really feel anything. Sometimes it's like I feel something. I don't know what it is. But that's just what so far what this has made me think about was like, you know, a lot of this is saying we gotta do the watering, right? And that watering looks like however you want it to look, right? You can choose to have a pot with one, you know, spout that just comes out, one stream comes out, or you have the fancy one with the shower head that have all the multiple streams that come out, and you just go with that. You know, it's up to you what you choose to water with or how you choose to water. But I think it's just keep watering, and you know, we have the evidence, right? The evidence really is the quality of our life, not based on, you know, quality of the comparison to the world around us. But yeah, that was it. When we water, we just water. Where the water goes,
We don't always know, and we don't always see the growth happening. So we think there is no growth happening, you know, like sometimes I'll say this when I'm teaching yoga, you know, like you may be doing the work and feel like your life isn't changing yet because you don't see the growth results. But, you know, do you feel your toenails growing? You don't feel your toenails when they're growing, but lo and behold, you look down and you're like, oh, I need to cut my toenails. They've grown. So growth happens without us even being able to pick up on it until there's enough that we're like, oh, there's the evidence. And so trusting that, you know, the watering is effective. And so I think it's important to put into practical terms, like, what does it mean to water our roots? You know, effort is what waters those seeds of where you intend to put your resolution, where you intend to be fixed. Is the effort is what waters those seeds of intention, you know. And so we put in the effort to to just right now, like whatever that seed is for you, you want to understand divinity and source. You don't have your own sort of firm foundation of what you believe it to be. Like even me, I say Krishna, I use the word Krishna, I believe in Krishna, I have Krishna all over my home, but I have lots of other deities, and I believe that God and source manifests all kinds of forms. But yet I have chosen to anchor into one where I can focus all my direction and so that I can go deeper. Because you imagine I'm chanting Ganesh over here and Shiva over there and Lakshmi over there, and it's just like I'm all over the map. It's doing something, but it's not the same as if I just can go deep into one place, right? I have a personal development coach that I've worked with, and he talks about going, really narrow and deep. If you want development in your life, to go narrow and deep, where a lot of people are very broad and on the surface. They kind of want to do everything broad and on. They have major FOMO, and so they want to just broad stroke it. And you can do that. People live their whole lives like that. You can do that. But for those of us that really aspire to and feel called to have a growth and evolution in our lives, right? And I think all of us who are here in this room, we have that call in our heart where we know we want more out of ourselves and more out of life. And by more, I mean a deeper connection, not more stuff, but a deeper connection. And so the way to do that is to go narrow and deep. But it does take time for you to pick like where, and you might find like I went narrow and deep here. I watered that thing and it looked nice and pretty. And then all of a sudden the edges of the leaves started to turn really brown. And I realized that was a toxic situation. And so I had to uproot. And that happens. It happens and it's okay. Because we have our own roots, and those gurus, those teachers are just there to help us water our own roots. They aren't our roots. They're there to help us water our own roots. But we get kind of stuck in this idea that like, those were my roots, that was my foundation. And so we feel like we don't have one when we lose those teachers or those communities or those spiritual inspirations, people who are guiding us. Like I didn't know Wayne Dyer personally, but when he passed, I was really sad. I was like, man, we lost a good one. You feel like, oh, we need that teacher in the flesh. And it's really, no, that teacher is trying to show you within your own fleshy experience that you got your own roots to water. And so figuring out what you're just giving yourself the time and the space for your journey and being willing to explore. And when I say be willing to explore, I don't mean explore a bunch of different things, like to explore the thing that you are investigating. I had a teacher to try to define what faith means. I'm like, how would you describe faith? Like, how do you define that faith? And he says, it's just believing in something enough to be willing to do the experiment. Right? Believing in something enough, just enough to be willing to do the experiment. So, I believe that, I have a creator, and some people have presented creator to look and be and have these qualities. And so that resonates with me. And so now I've been willing enough to do the experiment and use their techniques to bring me closer in that connection to my source. And that has gotten me to where I am, right? To having the connections and the foundations that I have. So just keeping that in mind, like just being willing enough to do the experiment and see what the results are. And like Ed was saying, the evidence is all around us. We have to just give it some time. And when the evidence doesn't look so great, we trust it like, well, that was the journey that our creator wanted us to be on. And it's part of helping us get closer to our roots, not further away. Because sometimes that's how the mind wants to digest it, right? Yeah. Any thoughts? Jackie, what you thinking about all this?
I like it. I think when you're looking at having that center bed, I thought of an atom and how the little electron kind of spins around and it can go far out or very close. And that that changes as we kind of ebb and flow through life and our journeys. And then definitely thinking of, well, you said, you're focused on Krishna, and I was like, I do have multiple little deities around my house, and maybe that should be focused more on one rather than a broad spectrum.
They can all hang out. I like all my deities to hang out, but at the epicenter of it is always Krishna. For me, and it took me a while to get there. It took me a while to get there. So it's okay. Don't do that thing. But at the same time, reflect.
Yeah.
Reflect. I'm like, maybe I'm a little, maybe what if I just have one out at a time for a month? And how does that feel? Because then you can start to really sit with how each one makes you feel, which one you resonate with. I've been, I'm 40, just so you know, I'm 40 years old. And, I came into all this yoga, Eastern stuff when I was in my early 20s, around 2021. I was raised Mormon. So I was totally raised in a very American Christian based tradition. And so it took me a while to figure out. And I had, and I have a love for all the different expressions of divinity, but in my mind now, all of those expressions really just lead back to the one place. But it's taken me a while to get there. And I have other friends who are like, Shiva is the epicenter of their altar. And I can go there and I can totally hang out and be on that page with them, because to me, they're all expressions of the one. However, I have the one that I most resonate with, that really lights me up, that I lean into. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Anything else? Would you want?
Sometimes, I was
go
just going to say, the way you were describing it, sometimes it's like speaking a language where you can speak in all these different languages, but one of them is going to really like click for you, and you can understand it on a deeper level. And so choosing to go down that path instead of dividing your attention in a number of different, almost infinite different ways, helps you to grow. And like you said, like that's a way to water the roots of who you are.
That's right. That's a great analogy, or just comparison, and even if you can speak all those languages fluently and well, you're still going to have one where you're like, it just rolls off my tongue, like it just feels so natural. And that's what we're looking for, is like that one, yeah. It's like, what is the saying? Jack of all trades, but master of none.
But oftentimes better than a master of one.
Have you ever tried to speak 3 languages at one time and expect people to understand you?
So I haven't, but I speak Portuguese because my dad is Brazilian. So I was raised in a house where my dad would only speak Portuguese to me when he would drive me around. But then I learned Spanish in high school. And I don't speak the language, even though I took 5 years of advanced placement Spanish. I grew up speaking Portuguese. I've spent time in Brazil, but I don't like to speak them. You know why? Because I combine the languages and no one can understand me. So I always come back to my root, which is English. So good point, Ed. Where were you taking that one?
To just that when I think about it energetically, right? I'm trying to think, like when anything is concentrated, it's powerful versus when it's dispersed or spread out or distributed, I think. And I was trying to think of an instance where that wasn't the case, but even in like talking, like if you mastered 5 languages, and tried to talk all those 5 languages at one time, right? It's
dilutes the ability for communication.
Possible, may not be possible, right? If a person could probably do it, but I literally mean like try to talk English, Spanish, and Japanese all at the same time out of one mouth. what that would even sound like, right? But when you speak the one language that you know really well, you connect it with your mind, your heart, your soul, all your ability to reference the whole entire skill of communicating. You know, it's very, very powerful, right? It has moved entire communities of people, right? When you move your body in that way, it's way more powerful than if you try to like hold something up here with the right hand, tickle, touch something down here with the left foot, look a different way. When you're riding a motorcycle or driving a car, try to look left and turn and drive straight or right, something like that. Right? It's like you gotta concentration is very important. No wonder it's part of the 8 limbs, right?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I did want to connect it to the Yoga Sutras because I know we got a lot of yogis who like to come to these classes. So, how does this connect with sort of the more modern day or what we call classical yoga, Patanjali's yoga, which is the codified version of this more ancient body of knowledge that we get from the Gita and all these other texts. And so in the very first chapter, Patanjali is saying, now we're going to study yoga. Here's what yoga is. Yoga is when we slow down the fluctuations of the mind, right? Yoga's chitta vritti nirodha, to slow down the fluctuations or the vacillations of the mind. Sounds a little bit like Krishna telling us to find samatvam, evenness of mind, right? He says when we slow down these thoughts, the vacillations, or he calls them fluctuations, when we slow down, he doesn't say stop or to get rid of, he just says a cessation, right? They start to subside, right? When we do that, we stand in our true form. Tada drastu vastanam. Tada drastu vastanam. We stand in our true form. And what he means there is now we are in our most authentic self. We're not lost in the vacillations, but we are in our most authentic self. And then he goes on to talk a little bit, but then he starts to say, here's how you achieve this yoga. That yoga I just described, here's how you achieve it. The first word he gives is abhyas. Abhyas and vairagya, practice and detachment. Abhyas is practice. Vairagya is detachment. Now, the interesting thing that I want to point out is he uses this word abhyas and we define it as practice, but what does that mean? What does practice? Right? Does it mean to do 108 sun salutations? Does it mean to go do Kundalini Kriyas? Does it mean to chant japa? Like, what practice are you talking about? There's so many practices. And so he defines abhyas. And he says, practice is, pop quiz for my yogis out there. What does he define abhyas as? Keeping the mind fixed in concentration. That's practice. Keeping the mind fixed in concentration, keeping the mind steady, abhyas. So when Krishna is talking about being resolute with one aim, I think that's just a more intellectual way of saying this very practical thing that Patanjali is giving us to do. Keep your mind fixed in concentration, like have one pointed focus on this thing. Because when we're scattered in the vacillations, right, then we get diluted. Our potency, our bright light, our beautiful love energy, it gets diluted. As Ed was saying, when something is concentrated, it's much more potent. But if it's not concentrated, it gets diluted, right? It loses that's potency. So when we can concentrate our focus in one place, we become much more resolute. Right? So Krishna is saying the same thing. Patanjali is trying to relay to us what Krishna was saying, but in a less sectarian or more, in our own words, dogmatic way. Because for some people, the Gita can feel very dogmatic and very sectarian, even though I don't think it was meant to be that way. I just think that that's how we as humans tend to perceive things or translate things for our own false ego situations. But Patanjali is trying to relay the teachings of the Gita in its essence in a totally non-sectarian, non-dogmatic way. So he's just saying, keep your mind fixed in concentration, right? To be resolute with where you put your attention. That's what Patanjali is saying. When you do that, you're not going to be out here in all the vacillations. When you're in the vacillations, it's hard to stay focused, right? And Patanjali says you do all these things so that you can be in your authentic self. You do all these things, you can achieve samadhi, you can get siddhis, but really what he's trying to give us is this. I don't think he ever uses the word in the Yoga Sutras, but he is trying to give us samatvam, this equanimity that we have when we're one-pointed. How's that landing? Thoughts, feelings, contributions? I'm not the only person full of wisdom in this Zoom room right now, so please share. Azrael says, beautiful comparison. You have to go. Thanks for being here. Yeah, handle that 2-year-old. Thank you so much. Yeah, awesome. All right, Azrael, we'll see you. Hopefully we see her at Kirtan on Sunday. All right, so figuring out in this moment right now, what can you be resolute in? What can you anchor into where you are putting in that effort to water your roots? I think that's something to reflect on as we move into, 2022. Just taking time to really uncover what's in our heart. It's already there. We don't have to figure it out. We just have to uncover our heart's calling of, where are my roots? They already exist. It's just figuring out where they are and how to water them and what that looks like for you. Yeah. All right. Well, if we don't have any questions or comments, shall we, and we have 15 minutes left, we can try to hit this text 48, chapter 2, text 48 verse, which I think is nice to memorize, especially if you're a yoga teacher. You have these little verses memorized, like this is a nice one to say in a yoga class. Perform your duty equipoise. We talk about this a ton in yoga practice. Like, don't be disturbed if you like this pose or don't like this pose. Just keep breathing, right? Stay calm. You're going to be okay. And why do we teach that in yoga class? Because it's a very kindergarten version of what we're trying to train ourselves to do out in the college campus of life. Like, can we on our mat at least not get caught up in the vacillations of like, oh my God, I suck at yoga. Oh my God, I should do more yoga. Oh my God, look at that person doing their yoga. Oh, like the mind wants to vacillate, and can we just breathe and stay focused? When we do that on our mat, even though we're feeling the feelings, we're feeling the challenge, we're feeling the dislike, we're feeling the competition, we're feeling the envy, we're aware that all these vacillations are happening, but we're not getting hooked into them in a way where we're now topsy-turvy. Even though as those feelings are bumping up against us, it can feel topsy-turvy. We have a mechanism that allows us to stay, with a shock absorber system that allows us to be like, oh, I felt that, but I'm good. Oh, that one's hitting me, but I'm still here at center. And so it's like, this is a nice verse that you can share in your yoga classes or think about in your yoga practice of just like, for right now, can I not be attached to what a successful yoga practice looks like? Or what a sucky yoga practice looks like. Some days we're super tight and stiff and it's like, I suck at this yoga stuff today, right? And some days we're like, oh my God, look at my back bend. Someone take a picture. Look, I'm doing a handstand with no wall. And we get all caught up in it, right? And so as we are traversing those experiences, because they are going to happen, how do we recognize the feelings that are brushing up against us and honoring that they're there and that we're feeling them, that they're happening, but yet maintain a centeredness about us as we move through those experiences. This is a really great verse to remind us of that. Questions, comments? You're all nodding your heads. Thank you for that, because then I'm just not sure if what I'm saying is making sense, because everyone just got a blank look on their face. Just like in yoga class. You can never judge the quality of the class by the expressions on people's faces until they're done. Okay, so let's do text 48, chapter 2, text 48, perform your duty equipoise. So let's do the Sanskrit. I'm not going to chant it in the meter because I'm not going to do it right. And then Jagai will come in and then I'll be like, oh, I did that so wrong. So we're just going to say it. We'll get familiar with the Sanskrit. So I'll say a couple of words at a time and then you can repeat, okay? Yoga staha. So you see how there's a dash between yoga and staha. That's just for us phonetically to look at it, but we eventually it's like one word, yoga staha. Kuru karmani. Yoga staha. So like stira, steady, staha, steady, steady in yoga, right? Equipoised in yoga. Kuru karmani, perform your duty. Kuru karmani. Sangam tyaktva dhananjaya. Yogastaha kuru karmani. Yogastaha kuru karmani. Now look at me. Look at me. Yogastaha kuru karmani. Yogastaha kuru karmani. Close your eyes. Yogastaha kuru karmani. You just say it. Beautiful. All right. Next line. Sangam tyaktva. Sangam tyaktva. Dhananjaya. Sangam tyaktva. Dhananjaya. Sangam tyaktva. Dhananjaya. Sangam tyaktva dhananjaya. Sangam tyaktva dhananjaya. Let's start from the beginning. Yogastaha kuru karmani. Sangam tyaktva dhananjaya. Yogastaha kuru karmani. Sangam tyaktva dhananjaya. Yogastaha kuru karmani. Sangam tyaktva dhananjaya. One more time. Yogastaha kuru karmani. Sangam tyaktva dhananjaya. Beautiful. Second line here. Siddhya siddhyo. Siddhya siddhyo. So again, we're smushing the word together. Siddhya siddhyo. Samo bhutva. Siddhya siddhyo. Samo bhutva. Siddhya siddhyo. Samo bhutva. Siddhya siddhyo. Sama bhutva. Siddhya siddhyo. Samo bhutva. Let's try it from the beginning. Yogastaha kuru karmani. Sangam tyaktva dhananjaya. Siddhya siddhyo samo bhutva. Try it again. Yogastaha kuru karmani. Sangam tyaktva dhananjaya. Siddhya siddhyo samo bhutva. One more time. Yogastaha kuru karmani. Sangam tyaktva dhananjaya. Siddhya siddhyo samo bhutva. Nice. Last line. Samatvam yoga chute. So yoga uchate, you can mush together too. Samatvam, that equanimity, same. Samatvam yoga uchate. Samatvam yoga uchate. Samatvam yoga uchate. This is, yoga is equanimity, essentially, right? It reminds me of this treatise written by this Buddhist. He was raised in a Vedic tradition, but became Buddhist, much like Siddhartha, the Buddha. And he wrote a small treatise on yoga. And in the first couple of lines, he says, the greatest accomplishment of yoga is when the mind is not so disturbed. Because that leads to other things, right? So it's the greatest accomplishment is when our mind is not so disturbed. So this is a great verse. So let's try it from the top. Yogastaha kuru karmani sangam tyaktva dhananjaya siddhya siddhyo samabhutva samatvam yoga uchate. Yogastaha kuru karmani sangham tyaktva dhananjaya siddhya siddhyo samabhutva samatvam yoga uchate. All right, we got 5 minutes left, so I'd love to hear at least 3 of you try to say this without looking at your book. So what we'll do is you say one line and then we'll say the line so that we're all still kind of repeating it and learning it. And if you're like, I just need to say the whole thing, then we'll just let you say the whole thing. But who would like to take a stab at doing this? And you don't need to panic because the book is right in front of you.
I'll give it a shot.
Go for it.
Yoga stama ha kuru kamani.
Yoga staha kuru karmani. You got it.
Sangam chaktva. Oh, next one. Dana. I always struggle with this one. Dhananjana.
Yeah. Dhananjaya.
Dhananjaya.
Yeah. Good. So sangam tyaktva dhananjana. Dhananjaya. Sorry. Dhananjaya.
Dhananjaya. Sangam tattva. Dhananjaya.
Dhananjaya.
And then asidhya, samabhutva.
Samabhutva. Yep. Siddhya, siddhyo. Samabhutva.
Yo, samabhutva.
That's very good. Last line.
Yoga, no, samatvam yoga uchate.
Yeah, you did it.
Yeah.
Samatvam yoga uchate.
Thank you for your patience.
Yes, I recommend writing this down and just like taping it up on a mirror or your altar somewhere and reading it 3 times in a row, a couple times throughout the day. Just every time you walk in front of it, you just keep reading it and saying it out loud, and then it sticks. Nice. Max? Only if you want to.
All right, I'm down. Yoga staha kuru karmani
Yogastaha kuru karmani.
sankam tyaktva dhananjaya
Yes. Sangham tyaktva dhananjaya.
siddhya siddhyo samobhutva
Siddhya siddhyo samabhutva. The magic word.
Sattvam samatvam yoga uchate.
Yay, you did it. Samatvam yoga uchate. Very good. Very, very good.
I studied it a bunch, y'all.
You you did good. It's the effort that counts. Showing up and trying. It's not about doing it perfect or how well or not so well. It's just making the effort. And having to say it in front of people and not remembering it tends to leave an imprint where we don't want to be in that position again. And so it like ignites our desire to fully memorize it. You never know when you're going to be doing an Instagram live and Jagai is going to be watching and he's going to be like, what's the Sanskrit verse? You're like, shoot. All right, back to Ed.
It's okay to be like, I don't know.
I did. That's what I said. I don't know. He's like, you can remember it. Try.
Just like I. um, Yoga staha kuru karmani
Yogastaha Kuru Karmani.
sangam tyaktva dhananjaya.
Sangam Tyaktva Dhananjaya.
Siddhya siddhyo samabhutva
Siddhya Siddhyo Samabhutva.
samatvam yoga uchate.
Samatvam Yoga Uchate. Very good. Very good. Jackie, how do you feel? You want to give this one a try? You don't have to. It's okay.
Sorry, I don't have the book, so I can only have the memorization. So that's really hard.
Juggai normally will put the slideshow up and he puts the, I should have asked Ed to do that. Ed, you could have done that for us today, but don't worry about it. It's okay. I saw you reciting them with us and it is hard if you don't know what the word looks like. So words are tricky. So Kailash, you think you got it over there? Are you able to recite?
No, I also don't have the book with me, and I'm not sure I'll be able to do it.
That's all right. That's okay. So the other important thing to remember is the chapter and verse. So without looking down, what chapter and verse did we just memorize?
248.
248. Very good. So those of you that want to go look it up later, you can. All right, my friends, I hope that you are just in a nice open-hearted space of willingness to discover your journey and where you're at, and where your roots are, or that you're in a place where you have discovered and you're just willing to go deeper and really anchor into that. So honor where you are this week. This last week and a half of the year is always a great time to just really slow down and get clear on some things. And what a great thing to be pondering as we roll into next year, you know?
I have a really quick question. I sent it through after last week to the Yogalution Instagram direct message, but no one's responded yet. How do I donate?
Oh, how do you donate? Yeah, great question. We, you know, that we don't talk about it because this is just not, it's very informal. This isn't intended for that. But if you would like to donate, you can always do it on Venmo. If you send it to my Venmo, it'll go directly to the studio. And I'll put that in here for you.
Thank you.
But you can donate if you like, what you can. And then if not, you know, these classes are really more just because we enjoy doing them and they're good for me as much as they are good for you. And you're all my teachers as much as you have this belief that I am yours. And so, yeah, if you'd like to donate, you can. But that's the Venmo there, Dharma-Shakti. And yeah, and then we have our kirtan happening on Sunday at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Yes, Venmo. Oh, good. If you don't have Venmo, you can do PayPal. Let me know what your digital flavor of payment processing is. PayPal. Okay, I'll send, that's my email address. I'll put that here too. And then once you have it, you're good to go. Yeah, awesome. So we'll try to live stream the satsang on Sunday. That'll be 3 p.m. our time, Pacific Standard. Let me say our time, as if you all know, Pacific Standard Time. So if you want to live stream, and we'll do that on Instagram. We usually do it through the studio Instagram and the Bluff Instagram. Yeah, you got your Gita. Awesome. Yes, which book are we reading? That's the book we're reading. This is the book we're studying. So Jackie, you're in Long Beach, yeah? Are you in Long Beach? Yeah. I have to go get more out of my storage. So I'll have more at the studio soon. And so you're welcome to pick one up next time you're in there. Those are just books by donation, but you know, we give them out all the time. So we'd be happy to gift you a Gita if you want to continue studying. Maybe I'll have them by Sunday if you are going to be around for the kirtan. Okay.
Thank you.
All righty. We'll hope to see you all on the live stream. We'll be back next week and maybe Juggai will join us. And if not, we will carry on.
Live streams on Facebook?
The live stream will be on Instagram.
Instagram.
Yeah, on Instagram, on the studio. We usually do the studio Instagram and the Bluff Instagram, but it'll be on Instagram. It's the easiest way for us. Yeah. Okay. All right. I hope you got some nuggets of wisdom and some helpful insights today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dharma. Thank
Mhm.
you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for joining us again. And Kailash, good to see you. Jackie, nice to have you on here. Max and Ed, always great to gather with you all. So we usually close with this one nice little verse, which is also in the introduction. If you have the book, it's in there. It's towards the end of all those prayers. It starts with Vanchakalpa. So if you want to read that along with us, we'll just say it. Vanchakalpa tarubhyas cha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Which loosely translated, this verse just honors all of the assembled, aspiring, spiritual people, all the other devotees and, the people who are on the path with us, headed in that direction of source. We honor you and grateful to be with you. All right. Happy Thursday or Friday if you're in Australia. Camila, I think you should totally connect with my friends who are in Australia right now. And they actually do.
Dylan.
Oh yeah, you're in New Zealand. That's right. You should still connect with them. You're a little bit closer. But I'll look for your message on the DMs and I'll connect with you there and get you hooked up with them. I just feel like you guys would vibe real good. So we'll get you connected. More bhaktas. All right, friends and family, we'll see you all on the other side. Enjoy your day.